If you came to this session, you probably intentionally wanted to talk about performance concerns, right? Which sounds like a lot of fun, doesn't it? Sounds like a party. This is the way we finish off the conference, talking about performance concerns. But trust me, it's going to be good stuff. We're going to share some good stuff with you. And most of you, if you attended the keynote this morning, or if you came to the session last period, there's the middle school teacher in me coming out again, last period. You know my contact information. My name's Pete. I'm glad to have you here. I'm a former school principal. I'm a former assistant principal. Now I do this work kind of across the country, across the globe, and have the opportunity to have audiences with all sorts of educators in all sorts of places, and I just love it. So I am glad to be here. Bless you. If you could keep it down while I'm talking, I'd really appreciate that. I'm just kidding. Performance concern number one. We have a target, and I'm kind of losing my voice, so I'm going to have you chorally read this together. So here we go. Everybody, big, bold Indiana voices on 3. 1, 2, 3.
We will identify and practice strategies for addressing performance concerns in a positive, productive way without burning ourselves out.
Sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Because performance concerns can be a pain in a lot of people's lives, lots of necks. So we want to do this in a positive, productive way. We want to keep our heads screwed on straight so that we're doing this right and we're getting to the outcomes that we want to get to, and it's professionally respectful for everyone involved. And at the end of the day, you don't go home worn down, beat up, and felt like you've been through the ringer. So let's just get a feel for real quick who's in the room. Who are the principals in the room? The building principals. Okay, who are our district level administrators? All right, who are our assistant principals? Okay, how about anyone else with supervisory roles such as department chairs or curriculum specialists or something else? Did I miss anybody? Is there anybody that doesn't have supervisory roles that just wants to know how to misbehave better and get away with it? No, okay, so who are you guys? Special ed teacher? First grade? Fifth grade? Kindergarten? Bless you. And? 6th grade? Okay. Did I miss anybody? Yes, ma'am.
Special ed teacher.
Nice.
Working on my master's for
Okay. Excellent. Good. Well, welcome to everybody. And you guys can help make sure that we stay on track, because you know how a room full of administrators, they start to act a certain way, you know what I'm saying? And then we need our teachers to keep us, grounded. So thank you. I'm going to take a little bit of content out of this book. This is a fun book. If you ever have the opportunity, and seriously, you teachers need to talk to your supervisors about buying this book for you. Lead On Motivational Lessons for School Leaders. It really is, and this is as much of a sales pitch as I'm ever going to do on something. It is a little romp through leadership. It is just a fun exploration of the reality of being a leader in a school. So if you have a chance, it's a fun little thing. And yes, I wrote it, so it's kind of silly for me to be telling you how awesome it is. But I really do believe that it's something that helps keep us grounded, keeps us healthy. And it's 41 different vignettes. So at any given moment, any given day, you might say, oh, I need this little pick-me-up. I need this little message. And it's in there, and it's kind of couched in a story. And we've got everyone is supposed to have practical advice that we can take back into the trenches with us. So hopefully that's something helpful for you if you're interested. I want you to start right off the bat. Now, you've got some note cards in the center of your tables. I want you to take a moment or two and think about a performance concern that you have either witnessed or heard about. Because when we say performance concern, there's 30 people in the room. I can almost guarantee that every person in the room had a slightly different perspective or image or memory or fear pop into their heads. So I'd like to kind of get to a common ground where we're understanding what we're talking about. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, I don't want you to write anybody's name down. Okay, that's really important because I don't know where the cards are going to end up. But I do want you to write down the synopsis, the Cliff Notes version of this performance concern that you've heard about, you've experienced, you witnessed, you supervised, whatever the situation was. Just take a couple minutes on one of your note cards and jot down the big idea. What happened? What was going on? What was the concern? What was the behavior? What was the scenario? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so here's what I'd like you to do. You've taken a minute to kind of process that, and hopefully that wasn't too painful for you. What I'd like you to do is just kind of lean over to a neighbor and share your story, and have your neighbor share that story with you, just to kind of calibrate for a moment. Let's just exchange. If your neighbor is the person that caused the problem, this is a good time to go use the restroom real quick and duck into a different session. So did any themes emerge in your conversation? Just you and your partner maybe, or I know some of you just had table talk, and that's great. Did any themes come up?
Classroom management.
Classroom management is a big theme? Yep.
Somebody else's job.
It's somebody else's job. It's not my responsibility. I'm staying in my lane. I don't see that in my contract. Okay.
Just not doing the job.
Okay, not doing the job. Okay. Lack of professionalism. Okay.
We talked about how it's almost, we deal more with the teachers than we do the students, because we're redirecting the teacher
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, and physical proximity doesn't always work, right? And even gentle physical contact doesn't always work, right? Okay. Did anybody have anything that was just an egregious, you should be fired on the spot kind of behavior? You don't have to share it. Because generally speaking, what we talk about when we talk about performance concerns are two different things. One is there is no salvaging this wreckage, right? It's such a mess. You've punched a kid in the face. You called her a slut. Whatever you did, that just has, I'm sorry, we can't come back from that. And then there's the other one, which is a little bit more tricky, right? And so most of the things that you surface kind of fits in this little bit more tricky category, because there is an element of subjectivity to that, or objectivity, or subjectivity to that. Because there's, when you say just not doing the job, right, as an example, well, maybe doing the job, maybe not doing it, maybe doing part of the job but not all the job, maybe doing it but just not doing it that well. And is it so not well that it needs to be eliminated, or is it so not well and it can get better, or is it so not well and it can be okay? Right? There's a lot of gray area over here on this side. So the interesting thing that I have been studying recently about leadership is how we respond to that gray area. What we do when something raises a red flag, or the hairs on the back of our necks go up and say, there's something amiss here. This isn't quite right. This shouldn't be happening. But it's not so egregious that you kicked a kid in the neck, right? It's just this weird gray area. So I've found a video that pretty much conveys how we tend to do things in this gray area, and I'm going to share that with you. And then I'm going to talk about the actual strategies that we use as leaders that aren't very effective before we talk about a model that is a little bit more effective. So here we go.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are two people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's not enough left to do, is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
And as silly as that is, there is a certain way that we just don't handle performance concerns very well in our profession. So here are 4 ways that are pretty consistently applied in these circumstances that don't get us very good results. Number 1 is called the SPY idea. So for administrators who have assistant principals, or administrators who have instructional coaches or department chairs, what we tend to do is we ask those people to go into that room where this underperformance is happening, or this classroom management issue, or this lack of completion of the job is going on, and say, why don't you go in there and kind of have a look around and see if these things are happening, and then let me know what you see when you get in there. And you can imagine what kind of response that gets, right? Because you've got then an administrator who follows up with a teacher talking about an incident that the administrator never actually saw, because you've got that spy going on there. And I had the opportunity when I was with my other co-author, Elisa. We were flying to a city in the Southwest that will remain nameless. And we were going to go do some work with that district. Okay, it was Vegas. And we're going to go do some work with that school district. And Elisa, I don't like to talk to people when I get on an airplane. I just like to pull my hat down and pretend like I'm just asleep. But Elisa is a chatterbox, and she'll talk to anybody. So she's sitting next to me, and she leans over to the person sitting next to her and says, hey, what do you do? And so they found out they're both in education, right? So they're having this big conversation. They're getting along great. Oh, I teach third grade, and oh, what a great age. My kids are in third grade, blah, 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 blah. Then the lady asked Elisa, what grade do you teach? And Elisa says, oh, I don't teach anymore. I'm an instructional coach. And the lady's affect totally changed. And I could hear it in her tone of her voice when she says, oh, you're one of those. And Elisa said, what do you mean one of those? I'm one of you. I'm one of us. I'm one of that. What are you talking about? And she said, well, in my school, the way it works is the coach only comes in the classrooms where there's some kind of perceived incompetence, and then reports back to the administrator what's going on. Then all of a sudden the administrator shows up and dings them on an eval or writes them up for something, and the administrator never actually saw it. The coach is the only one that actually ever saw it. And you might be surprised how prevalent that practice is. It's sending someone else to go do the dirty work to observe it. Because a lot of administrators have this mindset, accurate or not, that when I go into a classroom, I'm not going to see what's actually going on in that classroom, because things are going to change the moment I walk in the classroom. And lots of teachers will shift their practices slightly or dramatically when an administrator walks in the room. Not to say you guys do that. I'm just saying lots of teachers do. So in the absence of that, or with that fear running that administrator's decision making, I'm not going to go in that classroom. I'm going to send somebody else in who will actually see what's going on, and they're going to tell me what's going on. You can see where that is fraught with peril, yes? Okay, that's strategy 1, not a good idea. Here's strategy 2. I am working so hard on building climate and culture in my building. I don't want to address this performance concern because I don't want people to start getting their feathers ruffled. I don't want people to get upset. I don't want to ruin the culture I'm building. So it'll get better. It'll get better. It'll be fine. So I'm just going to bury my head in the sand, pretend like it's not happening. As soon as one teacher thinks I'm out to get him, then all the teachers are going to think I'm out to get him. It's going to be chaos and mutiny, and I'm not going to be able to lead anymore. So I'm just going to be at peace with whatever's going on in that classroom. Why might that one not work? You're avoiding the problem.
It's going to get worse.
It might get worse.
The other teachers knowing you're not addressing exactly culture.
That's the biggest one, because if culture really matters to you, you'd be surprised how important it is and how every teacher, you all know who the slackers are in your staff, right? I mean, there's no question about it. You already know. So you also know if I'm not doing anything about it. And that, like you said, that will kill your culture quicker than confronting. Actually, confronting a performance concern will do more to enhance the culture of the building and the concept of professionalism and a certain status that this is where we're going with this, that brushing it under the rug is not going to do at all. Okay, so there's 2. Here's the third one, doesn't work. Just go through the process through the year. We'll do our formal evals, do our informal evals and our walkthroughs and all these kind of things. And at the end of the year, get them with the eval. Hit them with an unsat on something, unsatisfactory, needs improvement, whatever it is. We don't ever actually talk about that over the course of the year. It's just something that I'm going to get at the end of the year. Because isn't the teacher evaluation document supposed to accurately convey the teacher's performance over the course of the year anyway? So I would be lying if I didn't mark this on the teacher evaluation document. So I'm just going to wait for the eval document and kind of slide it to the teacher at that moment. And then that teacher will know it's time to improve. They've got to get their act together at this point. It's go time. Right? Why might that one not work? We still let it slide all year, right? Okay?
They could probably agree with, if you never brought it up to them before and then you ding them on the eval.
Oh, I'm sure we talked about it in some of our conversations. Yeah, we covered all those at some point, yeah.
Back to that culture, though, because they feel like
Yeah, there's got to be a second purpose, right? Improvement. Yeah. It goes back to when you talk about culture again, that whole idea of, you know how the word spreads around a teaching staff, right? Something bad happens, everyone knows it immediately. So as soon as that teacher receives that ding in the eval, who else on the staff knows that? And now who else on the staff is wondering, well, when am I going to get dinged? Yeah, and now there's no trust and there's no transparency. Okay, and there's a fourth that doesn't work. It's this one. And this, I've actually seen this, seriously, the dance of the lemons, I've actually seen this where you're struggling in 3rd grade, so I'm going to move you to 5th grade. Maybe you do better at 5th grade. Or you're struggling teaching biology, I'm going to have you teach something else. Or you're struggling with this, on this team, I'm going to move you to a different team. And maybe I'm moving you because that will make you so uncomfortable you'll want to leave. Like I've seen administrators move teachers from upper elementary, 5th, 6th grade, into primary, kindergarten, 1st grade, they have no interest in teaching, they have no training in developmentally kids that age, just to hope that they'll put in for a transfer and get out of their buildings. And then they end up at a different building. And they're going to bring their problems with them. I actually worked with a district once in which, I kid you not, this is the way they handled their performance concerns. At a principal's meeting, every principal wrote the name of 3 teachers down that they didn't want to work with anymore. And they put those names in the center of the table, and then everybody grabbed 3 names out of the center of the table, and that was their transfer period. Involuntary transfer period. Can you imagine that? You're such a bad teacher, I'm going to pass you off to somebody else, and that's their problem, and I'm going to get their problems. Seriously, can you imagine? That actually happens. So it's called the dance of the lemons, where we just pass the problem along without actually ever doing anything about it. And y'all can imagine what the repercussions are on that one. So instead what we want to do, and actually what I want to ask you real quick is, I've given you a couple of my examples. I want you to think about the examples that you've got in your background, whether you've actually seen it, heard about it, talked to administrators in which you've participated in any of those types of strategies. And then what was the outcome? Okay, so what were the outcomes of those situations? If there are performance concerns that you're aware of and your administrator or someone's administrator or a colleague of yours tried out these strategies, what happened as a result? Take a minute or two at your tables and just kind of exchange some stories about the ineffective ways that we handle performance concerns. And then we'll get to the effective way. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and yes, we got that. Okay. So I want you to hang on your stories. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far where we're just kind of admiring the problem. But I do want to surface the problem, right? We do need to surface it because it's real. And our incredible ability as administrators to ignore it in one way or another, which is really what those first 4 strategies do. They really kind of ignore the problems or go on in a very passive-aggressive way. That's dangerous, and we don't want to focus our attention there. So let's talk about what we can do to support our teachers and to address this in a positive, productive way that doesn't burn us out. Oh, here's my question. This is rhetorical, and it's kind of funny, and I actually do want an answer. So when is the best time to plant a tree? The fall, the spring, when it's going to rain? I like your answers. Those are good answers. My answer is 20 years ago. Okay? What's the second best time to plant a tree? Yeah, right now. If you haven't planted it yet, plant it now. But the best time is 20 years ago. So the confounding part of this work that I'm going to share with you is the best way to handle performance concerns is to do a ton of work up front, way before you ever have a performance concern. Kind of doing this work with the expectation that at some point you might have a performance concern, and if you do, it's nice to have all this work done in advance. Okay? So here's the work. Number 1, set that clear understanding that this is the expectation. We're setting the bar here. This is where your performance needs to be. This is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what it smells like. This is what it feels like. This is what it tastes like. So there's no ambiguity about what that expectation is and what that performance looks like. That's part 1. And we're going more into detail about these, don't worry. Number 2 is, along the journey, because remember we're all travelers on the journey together. So along the journey, make sure that we are just filling folks up with all sorts of helpful feedback. And remember, feedback is not one way. Feedback is an interaction, it's a dialogue, it's a back and forth. So engage in those feedback conversations. Have opportunities to discuss progress towards that benchmark. How are we doing? Number 3, when there's a concern, name it. Don't pussyfoot around it. Don't dance around the there's other expressions for that I can't think of right now. Just don't answer. Just name it. I have a concern with your performance. And we'll talk more about language we can use later. Number 4 is be there with support. In that moment, we've got great people with amazing hearts that are working in education. We owe it to them to provide every bit of support we possibly can to help folks get themselves out of this little hole that they've dug for themselves, one way or another. And then step number 5 is to trust the process. And believe me, folks, it is a process. It takes time to effectively work our way out of this performance concern, whatever that performance concern might be. Now, one of the toughest things we have to do, in particular as administrators, is to be really, really honest with ourselves about when we have a performance concern and we're addressing a performance concern, what is our goal in that process? Because there are a lot of different ways you could take that. And you remember what the Cheshire Cat said, right, to Alice? And she said, which way should I go? And the cat said, well, it depends on where you're headed, right? So we have to be clear on what our outcome is, what our goal is, so that we're taking the right course of action and we're doing the right things along the way. So let me just give you a couple examples. And these are all examples of goals that I have seen with principals that I have mentored and worked with when asked this question. What is your goal in this situation? I've had a principal say, well, this teacher needs to know I'm in charge. I'm the principal. So this teacher's got to do it the way that we do it here. I've had principals that say, these teachers don't trust that I am worthy of being a principal, and so I got to prove myself. And so by taking down this teacher or by pulling this teacher down a notch, I can prove my mettle. Okay? I've had folks that say, there's teaching that's not very good, and I need to fix that. I need to help with that. There's folks that want a teacher to grow. There are folks that say, my goal here is just to document this. And I've actually had people say, I'm going to retire next year, but I want the new principal to come in with a head start, so I'm going to document this before I go. And then there might be something else. And so typically, I'm just going to share with you my own personal philosophy, and this is honestly how I entered every one of these situations when there was some kind of performance concern that I was dealing with as a building principal. I honestly went into it, at least at the beginning, with this mindset right here, which is I am totally here for you until I can be here for you no longer. So we are partners in this. I am here to help you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to do whatever I can to help this get better, because it's got to get better for you if it's going to get better for kids, until we get to the point where I say, I am barking up a dead tree, right? And there does come that moment. And we have to know what that moment is. As leaders, we have to be willing to say, I've done everything I possibly can, and I'm sorry, now it's time to go. Okay? And you'll know when that moment comes, when that moment is part of the equation. So let's back up a little bit and go through those 5 steps, shall we? Okay, this is one of my favorite quotes from the late, great Becky Dufour, one of the architects of the PLC movement. She would say this in her keynote addresses all the time, and I have embraced it. I love it so much. Clarity precedes competence. If you want to get good at anything, you've got to be really clear on what that good is, what it looks like, smells like, sounds like. So we have our 4-point rubrics to describe teacher performance, right? And our teacher evals, and how many different publishers have published 4-point rubrics that describe teacher performance. And this is a totally generic, made-up one. Needs improvement, fair to middling, competent, exceptional, right? It doesn't matter what terms you use, what definitions you use. The point is, in any element of our teaching, in any component of our professional responsibilities, we must be exceptionally clear on what good performance is, what great performance is, what okay performance is, and then what this is not okay performance, subpar performance. We need to be really, really clear on exactly what that looks like. And our rubrics sometimes have descriptive language, right? And they describe it, and that might not be enough for all our folks to truly have a picture of that. So, here's an idea. Identify with your teaching staff the 3, 4, 5, 6 highest leverage, highest impact, most important elements of teaching that you're really going to focus on. So it could be instructional strategies, it could be classroom design, it could be the structure of our lessons, whatever it is that you want to look at. Be really, really clear on those, and then engage in a very simple protocol. We're not going to do it right now, but this is a protocol in which you brainstorm the characteristics. So let's just say We're a teaching staff. I'm the principal. I would ask you, let's just use engagement because we talked about student engagement this morning. So what does engagement look like in a classroom? And I've got 30 teachers in the room with a combined 600 years of experience. And let's use those years of experience to describe what engaged kids look like. What does a highly engaging lesson look like? And then what does it sound like? What kind of words might I hear if I were to walk into a classroom and it were highly engaging? What kind of things might the teacher be saying in that classroom? What are the kids doing if they're engaged? What's the teacher doing if the kids are engaged? And we'll talk about that together and brainstorm a list, come up with all sorts of different strategies and ideas. Because I want to validate our expertise. See where I'm going so far? Okay, the next thing is, we're experts, we have this experience, and that's wonderful. And there are people that particularly study engagement. Like Bobby Marzano and his crew, they actually study engagement and what kind of instructional strategies lead to higher engaging lessons, which leads to higher levels of student learning. So let's consult the experts. So our second step in the process is read some articles, read excerpts from books, get the research to add to our personal professional expertise. Then we got this incredible slew of information about engagement, don't we? We compiled this together. We do this together as a staff. The next step in the process then is to prioritize that list and identify what our key elements are. So out of the research and out of our experience, we're going to together say, and we'll use a consensus building protocol, and there's all sorts of them. If you go to the nsrfharmony.org site, the National School Reform Faculty, you ever been to that site? Oh my gosh. Okay, here's your first resource. Write this down. nsrfharmony.org. The National School Reform Faculty has a website that it is just full of protocols. So if you want a protocol for analyzing student work, if you want a protocol for leading teachers through diagnosing what the problem is, if you want a protocol for consensus building, they've got tons of protocols. It's fantastic. Faculty meeting, your whole year of faculty meetings is just done. You just got your protocols for that. You're welcome. We go through a protocol in which we arrive at consensus on what the 6, 7, 8 top descriptors are for what it looks like, what it sounds like. And then what do you have? If you've done that, what do we have as a staff? We've just built our top 8 most important characteristics of engaging lessons. What does that do for all of us? Okay, sets an expectation, gives us something to strive towards. Okay, buy-in because we own it together. It's not the principal saying or Bob Marzano's book or James Strong's book that says it's us. What else? What has it done for us as administrators, leaders? Okay, demonstrates my openness to listen and work together collaboratively, yes. Okay, definitely empowers the staff, and we feel good when our staffs are empowered. Sets the expectation.
It shows your whole faculty and that we're all doing this together in collaboration.
Yes, we're all together, right? And doesn't it also give us our look-fors? Our look-for focus? Because we're going to do walkthroughs, we're going to visit classrooms anyway. Now we have the exact things we're going to look for. And we can refer back to whether I saw them, I didn't see them, I heard them, I didn't hear them in the classroom. And it's not this mysterious list of what's the principal looking for when he comes in the classroom or she comes in the classroom. It's known up front, it's transparent, it's all established, and we built it, so there's really no argument that, well, why are you looking for that? Well, we talked about this and we built that together, remember? It gives us all that, I don't want to say ammunition, but it gives us, it gives us all that information and it's set up in advance. Okay, so far so good? Okay, hang on to that. If you have questions, please let me know, because I tend to do that thing where I'm like, y'all good? Good. And then if you're not good, you didn't have a chance to tell me you're not good. So just tell me if you're not good at any point and we'll stop and we'll go through something. So y'all good? I'm using wait time because wait time is our best friend. I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so once we set the expectation, you've probably seen that or heard that quote before, right? Inspect what you expect. Because if you expect something to be going on, you better get in there and see and make sure it's going on. Simple as that. And if it's not going on, give people help as soon as possible. Because don't you want to know there's a problem as soon as there's a problem? Right? So the more we're in classrooms, the more we visit, the more we walk through, the more we observe, the quicker we'll know what's going on. And I shared this with the crew last period. We talked about what you see and hear in a classroom is only a tiny piece of what's actually going on in our teachers' minds. and why they're doing what they're doing. So it behooves us as leaders to ask questions about, why did you do that? How did you select that strategy? When you asked that question and you used 15 seconds of wait time, tell me how you determined how much wait time you were going to use. Ask questions to get information, because there's so much more that's under the surface that we don't know unless we ask, right? So it's essential for us to get that information. Okay. And I mentioned this to the team last too. This goes back to our keynote about reflective practice, that ultimately what we want to do is shift how our teachers are thinking about what they're doing, because that will change some practices in the classroom. Okay, more strategies. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to share with you right now. It's kind of be like rapid fire, and then I want you to be able to process these. So, here's actual language to use. I'm giving you tools, people. Use these words. Help me understand. So when you see something that raises the hackles on the backs of your necks, or your eyebrow cocks as a result, use these words. Have the conversation, say, help me understand what I saw in your classroom today. Help me understand what was going on in that moment. And then, do you know what you do as administrators, evaluators? Zip it. Wait. Because wait time is one of our best friends. When we say, help me understand, we actually want that person to help us understand. So the more we talk in that moment, the less we're going to understand what's actually happening. We want the person that we're talking to, the teacher, to explain what's going on, because we can't diagnose and get to the root of the issue if we don't actually have insight into that person's thinking first. So we use the term help me understand, and when the person explains what's going on, if you still have a concern or an issue with it, here's the words that we use next is, well, let me help you to understand the expectation. Let me help you take the next step. Let me help you see this from a different perspective. And I love the words of Todd Whitaker. If you've ever had a chance to see Todd Whitaker speak, he does a whole workshop on, I think it's called Dealing with Difficult Teachers, where he ambles up next to a teacher and he says, you know, I'm hearing some things in the hallways and the staff about, you know, some of your performance or your attitude towards other faculty. And if it were me, I would want to know. So I'm sharing it with you so that you're aware of it. So if there's anything you want to do about it, you can do that. It's kind of a variation of this idea of the let me help you idea. Let me help you with understanding how this looks to your colleagues. Let me help you make a different decision. So that's one. Here's another one. If you ever use the word but in your dialogue, just strike it from the record. Just get it out of there. Don't ever use it again. Replace it with the word and. And so think about this for a second. Think about a time that you might use the word but in a sentence. I really like how you've set up your classroom, but the way the kids get their materials is really inefficient. What have you just done to that first statement as soon as you say but? You just disregarded it, you just dismissed it, and you've actually made yourselves combatants in the conversation. How about this one? I really like the way you've set up your classroom, and the way the kids get their materials is really inefficient. We're at least partners now, right? That we're going to problem solve together. I love the way you have you set up your classroom. It's just inefficient. So what can we do about this? As opposed to, you did something, but it is not working. And now you're going to have to throw it away. And just about any time that you use the word but, you could substitute the word and now you're partners. You're on the same team. You're problem solvers together. So I'll just give you that advice, and I want you to start paying attention to the number of times you use the word but in conversation. Ask your spouse to pay attention for you to how many times you use the word but in conversation. Just to see. I really love that dress, honey, but there's nothing you can say after that. That is going to fix it. There's nothing. There are no words that fix that. So you've become combatants. I really love that dress, honey, but I like sleeping in the garage. Okay. Here's the third one. And this is from SmartBrief, and this is just an article that came out really recently that's really kind of cool. Marlene Chisholm wrote this, and she talks about how to confront the elephant. So if you have an opportunity, if you're on social media, you could look up the entire article. You just look it up at smartbrief.com. So the elephant in the room is the performance concern that maybe just goes unaddressed, typically. So let's just say that you're in you're working with a teacher and you think that teacher does not value you as a leader, does not respect you as a leader. So you're in a faculty meeting, and as you share an idea that you have going on, you could have sworn that teacher just rolled her eyes. You know what I'm saying? I think she rolled her eyes at me. That's so rude, man. So the first thing that Marlene says is, get out of your own head. Because in your own head, absent facts, you create a narrative. You write a story about why she just rolled her eyes. Okay? And it has something to do with you and not respecting you, and pretty much that story is going to snowball and get worse and worse. And the next thing you know is you're going to be looking out the window of your house. Is she out there trying to slash my tires? What's going on out there? And you have built up this huge story. So the first thing to do is get out of your own head and just say, hey, I'd love to sit down with you sometime. Are you available Thursday during your prep period? Can we talk then? And once you've set the meeting, then you're at least out of your own head for the next couple days. You can have the conversation when it's meeting time. Quit writing the narrative. Quit filling in the blanks. Second step is get out of the story. Okay? So what that means is, rather than create the narrative, rather than be the author, ask the person that you're frustrated with, hey, help me understand. During our faculty meeting, I said such and such, and I look over at you and you rolled your eyes. Help me understand what you were thinking in that moment. What was going on there? And just stop then and let the person write the narrative. Okay? There may be some anxious moments. There may be some tension in the room, and that's okay. It has to be. The only way we can truly grow is by experiencing some of that conflict and experiencing some of that tension and being, at times, at peace with that disequilibrium. So ask the person, let the person share this story. Third step in this process, or the third option, is own it. And the reality is, we are not immune. As leaders, we influence the people with whom we work. We influence our followers. We influence our teammates. We influence the faculty. So the things we say, the way we act, the decisions we make, that has an impact on folks. And we have to realize that that's real. Now, it may be that I don't like the way you responded to my decision. The reality is, you responded to my decision. So I have to own, I'm sorry if that decision made you uncomfortable. I'm sorry if this idea, maybe you didn't feel like you had enough voice in the decision. Whatever it might be, we have to own whatever our contribution and our part of that is. And it is really hard to do that when you're looking at a teacher that you know is just not doing the job the way you want them to do it, right? However, we have to own it, because the fourth step in this process is that we're clarifying the fact that my job is to help you get better. I don't care how good you are. You could be amazing. You could be the LeBron James of teaching. And my job is to help you get better. Is LeBron James okay? Can I Victor Oladipo? Who do you want me to use? LeBron's good? Okay. My job is to help you get even better, whatever it is. So I want to have a conversation with you in which we problem solve, we creatively come up with some ways that we can make this better. And we set the tone right off the bat that that's okay. Okay. Here's my next piece of advice. Remember, if you see a performance concern, name it. So in advance of that, we're going to say this. Early and often, and I don't think you can say this enough to your faculty. Hey y'all, if I have a concern with your performance this year, I'm going to use the phrase, I have a concern with your performance. I'm not going to pretend, and I'm not going to sweep it under the rug, and I'm not going to use some other weird term. I'm going to use the words, I have a concern with your performance. And then I'm going to tell you what it is. And then we're going to have a conversation about it to see if we can make it better. And I'm going to tell my staff this in our August back-to-school meetings. I'm going to tell them in our first September faculty meeting. I'm going to tell them again when we start talking about the schedule of formal observations and evaluations throughout the school year. And I'm going to tell them again in December, January that, hey, remember, if I have a concern with your performance, what am I going to tell y'all? And they'll repeat it back to you. And you say, yes. And if you haven't heard those words from me yet, then we're good to go. As soon as you hear those words from me, our relationship shifts just a little bit, because now you know that there's a concern with your performance, and we're going to be aggressively pursuing that. Try to make it better. Does that make sense? Then guess what happens? If you actually have a performance concern with the teacher, what words do you use? Say it with me. Okay, and that's essential, because we talked about climate culture before, about establishing this environment in which it's upfront and transparent and honest, and there's trust involved. As soon as you say the words to one teacher, I have a concern with your performance, guess how many teachers know that? Eventually all of them, right? And probably not too long after that. And everybody already knows that she's a concern. Sorry for poking you. It's not you. I love you. I think you're wonderful. I don't know what your principal's problem is. Everybody in the building already knows that that is a performance concern, and now they're thinking, okay, a couple things. One is, this principal means it. If there's a performance concern, it's going to be addressed. That's fantastic. And thank God that principal hasn't come talk to me yet. I must be okay. I must be doing okay because I haven't heard it. There's not going to be a sneak attack later. And sometimes it takes a year, 2 years, 3 years of getting satisfactory evaluations to trust that there's not going to be a sneak attack later. And it takes the reality that there were a couple performance concerns that were brought up over the course of the last year, 2 years, 3 years to understand that, okay, if I haven't heard the phrase, I have a concern with your performance, then I must be doing okay and all systems go. Okay, now here's the tricky part. Sorry, this seems like a lecture. Does it seem like a lecture to you? I apologize. The tricky part is then how you address the concern. So when you say, I have a concern with your performance, then what? Well, the way we couch the language that we use at this point follows the acronym FICA. It's easy to remember because it's a tax thing, and this is just about tax season when your evals are due, right? So FICA. First, we share the facts. This is what I saw. This is what I observed. This is what was happening in your classroom. This is what was reported to me and then verified when I asked you about it or I asked the kids about it or whatever. We share the facts. This is not a time to throw hunches in. This is not a time to say why this is a bad idea. It's just facts. This is what happened. On this date, you said this to the kid. On this date, you acted this way, whatever. Facts. The I is for the impact. So what does this mean? When you use sarcasm in your classroom, kids worry that you're not a safe adult, and we're trying to create safe environments in the school. When your teaching isn't planned in advance, there's no learning going on, and your classroom management is kind of chaotic. Okay, so the fact that you didn't have your lesson plans turned in, I came to your classroom, observed, and you didn't have lessons posted, or you didn't have the lessons available for me to review, indicated to me you weren't planned, and as a result, the classroom was a little bit of a mess. Okay, so it's the impact that we're sharing. Here's the result of this work. The C is for context. And usually in context, this is where we shared, we've had this conversation before. And we set the expectation back in August. Remember when we had all our conversations about lesson planning and the importance of lesson planning and the lesson planning template and all the different elements that we want to include in our lessons to make sure that we're very intentional about everything we do in the classroom. All that was set in advance. We've talked about it in multiple professional development days. You and I have had one-on-one, face-to-face conversations about this 3 times already, and now it's risen to the point where I have a concern with your performance because it's a pattern of behavior. And then the A is, this is my expectation for you moving forward. The action that I want you to take. And early on, we'll offer support, right? We'll give you all these different options. We have professional development sessions on this. We have an instructional coach that can work with us. You've got these resources that you can access. I'm willing to help you by providing feedback and such, however often, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We'll provide those support, and this is the expectation that I want you to reach. It is now your responsibility to reach out to those resources and do something about it to prove to me that this job is worth your time and energy. Okay? So far, so good? Yes, ma'am. Awesome. Well, what a fantastic opportunity. And sometimes it's just a matter of clearing the air and having the conversation. Right? And how many times, and remember the elephant? Where you create the narrative. And so many times we create our own narratives and make this great big deal. And then we get so worked up about having a conversation with somebody because it's such a big deal. And really all we needed to do is say, hey, help me understand what's going on. And it's just an upfront, let's just have a professional dialogue. Right? We're travelers on the journey. Let's talk about it. Talk about the journey a little bit. Okay, so I know that was rapid fire, and I don't know how rapid it was, but there was a lot of stuff there that I'm hoping that you kind of are pulling together. What I'd like you to do now is to try to take that information and bring it back to your card with your misbehavior, your professional misconduct, your subpar performance, your performance concern, whatever it is. And what I'm asking you to do is just pair up. So try not to do table because it's pretty intricate. It's really helpful if you can just pair up with one person and exchange cards with each other and say, let's do yours first, okay? You can't both say that, obviously, but one of you select which one you're going to problem solve. And see if you can just kind of go through the multiple strategies and the information I shared with you to see, well, what might this look like? And feel free to go back in time and plant a tree 20 years ago as part of your game plan, because that'll help remind you that when you're thinking about launching for next year and some other work that you might want to do, setting the expectation as soon as possible can be a really, really handy strategy for you in addressing them. And the two of you just problem solve together and say, what would I say to this person? How might I address this? What opportunities might I have to go have a conversation with this person in a non-threatening way? You know, those first conversations are best had in the teacher's classroom rather than a call to the office. I mean, there's a degree of severity that comes with come to the office and talk to me. And there's another if you just kind of happen to be walking by. I used to do this with teachers. I knew their prep period is coming up. Middle school principal, right? And so I'd be in the hallway walking back and forth outside that teacher's door until the bell rang. The kids left, and then I'd be like, oh, hey, are you on prep right now? How handy. Listen, can we talk for a second? And I'd come in the classroom just to, happen to be there. And it's those kind of things where you're just in that setting. It's a totally different conversation than we need to have a conversation in the office. So when it's time to say, I have a concern with your performance, that's an in-the-office conversation. It just is. It has to be. All those other conversations almost need to be in those neutral settings or in the teacher's happy place in the classroom. Okay, so enough of me talking. You guys, with a partner, see if you can process your scenario and see what you come up with for ideas for how we might address some performance concerns. All right, team, let's bring it back in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and yeah, thank you. That was a good whoosh. All right. So in your conversations, is there a particular strategy or a particular approach that you thought, that sounds like a good idea. That seems like that might work. That might be helpful. Something. Yes, ma'am. What's cool about that is once you put it out on the table, it's something you can refer back to. It's a whole lot more difficult if you haven't said that in advance to use the phrase, I have a concern with your performance, because now that's not a known quantity. It's coming out of left field. Okay, thank you. Good. What else? Yeah. So FICA, just so you phrased it as my FICA, not mine. It comes from an attorney, McGrath. They wrote the McGrath template. It was actually a structure for writing a memo when you're documenting a performance concern. So if you're ever to the point where you're like, oh, I have to document this, FICA is a great way that tends to be pretty legally defensible. Here are the facts. Here's the impact of this. This is why this is not okay practice. Here's the context that we've talked about this before and established, and then here's what I want you to do. You're pretty clean on that. And what we tend to do in the absence of having a clear structure is meander. And a meandering memo gets us nowhere. So a nice, clear, explicit, there's really nothing to argue in there is a perfect way to document it, or to have that. You can even use that as a frame for a face-to-face conversation. Yeah. So McGrath. And we can thank the folks at McGrath for that. I don't remember who they are, but they're McGrath. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and I'm telling you, friends, wait time. Please, just use your wait time. Because one of two things will happen in wait time. One is the teacher will explain their thinking, and you're like, oh, okay, I understand. We can work with that. Let's work with that. Or two is if you use enough wait time, and my old mentor used to tell me this, you give them enough rope, they'll hang themselves. So there's a reality there, too, that the longer you have wait time, the more we tend to want to fill it. And as educators, we tend to want to fill wait time, right? In our classrooms, in our faculty lounges, in our meetings one-on-one. So if we are willing to use wait time and let it be quiet and be okay with that quiet, someone else is going to fill that. And that's exactly the person you want filling that wait time, one way or the other. To tell us it's going to be okay, or to tell us they need to be working at the Home Depot. One or the other. I'll put an even finer point on that. If you want to know what a long time feels like, you should have asked my wife's father for his blessing in her hand. He was a retired Marine Corps colonel, and I thought, we were in a car together, and I thought, this is a perfect opportunity. We're shoulder to shoulder. I don't have to look him in the eye, and he doesn't have to give me that death glare, and I'll just ask him for his blessing, right? So we're in the car, we're on the freeway in California, and I asked him for his blessing. He didn't say a word. He just kept looking forward as he drove, and we came around the bend on the freeway, and there was a traffic jam. It must have been an hour before he finally said something. I rolled down my window. I actually stuck my head out the window and then I tried to roll it up and just end it. It was a miserable couple of hours. I don't know how long it was. It was probably 30 seconds, honestly. He's probably like, yeah, sure, Pete, that sounds like a great idea. Whatever. I'm hopeful that this information has been something that you can take back with you. I encourage you to try it out. I want you to be really, really thoughtful and intentional about addressing performance concerns. Here's the last little bit before I hand it back over for our shutdown. Burnout is real, my friend. And so as you're thinking about, can you all relate with a bird? I told you, I'm telling you, when I was a middle school principal, every morning I would get up and I swore I was top center bird. And then at the end of the day, I come home, I was that bird. In the bottom right, just covered in all the, you know what I'm saying. So the question is, what are you doing to make sure that you're top center bird, right? How are you keeping yourself out of this, or how are you washing yourself off? And I'm thinking about the point A to point B that I was asking you this morning about something that you're passionate about, something that you're interested in, something that fills your bucket. I have seen so many educators, administrators in particular, that get burnt out from this work because we're always giving, we're always giving, we're always giving, we're always working, and there's never enough hours in the day to get the work done. And I guarantee you it'll still be there tomorrow. It always will be. Make sure that you spend time doing things that make you feel good. Make sure you spend time doing things that fill your bucket and put cookies in your cookie jar so that you can be good to other people. When you come back, whether it's your teachers, your kids, the parents, and the community you serve, that is so important. I can't tell you how important that is, because one day you're going to look back and you say, man, I should have used a little bit more me time. So the best time to plant that tree? Second best time? Thanks for coming to the conference, spending time with me. Have a great afternoon. Go get them. You're welcome, and you're welcome.